firm that we do two things. Number one, we represent seniors and disabled persons who receive Social Security, pension, disability, VA benefits to stop collectors from harassing them. There's a federal law passed back in 1978 that provides if you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors have to leave you alone. They can no longer call or send demand letters anymore. And people find out about helps, they enroll in our program, and they give us the collectors they owe money to or creditors, and we send what's called a cease and desist letter, and the communication stops. Like one of our very early clients told me, she said it was like I was out in the middle of the ocean and everything was flat, calm, and peaceful. Where before it'd been a storm. Now she didn't get any more harassing calls or demand letters. And that's what we do. And our second mission is to educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. And that's what we do. And we have these YouTube live sessions to answer your questions. You can put them in the chat feature. And I have things to talk about too that I've saved over the last few hours. But welcome, and press the like button, subscribe to our channel. People find out about helps more this way than about any other way is on our YouTube videos. And I'm glad you can hear me. And thank you, Kathy, for letting me know that. Okay, so the topic today is we got an email. I saw someone, and they fill out a form on our channel, and this is what they wrote. I am overwhelmed by credit card debt. I am a widow living on survivor's benefits. Can you help? Yes, we can help. So the topic was today I put down was overwhelmed by credit card debt. And so if you're a senior or disabled, and if you're receiving Social Security, disability, VA benefit, a pension, IRA, 401k, any form of retirement, under federal law and state laws, your income is protected. Okay, it doesn't need to be used to pay a debt you can't afford to pay. Okay, and then there's also a law passed in 2012 that tells banks if someone is sued and they get a writ of garnishment on your bank account, they look at your bank account, and if any money came from a federal source like Social Security, they times that times 2. And that sum is automatically protected by your bank from garnishment, regardless of what other funds are in there where they came from. So no one can take your Social Security, no one can, and it's protected in your bank account, in your pension. It's all protected. Don't want you to worry. And that's what helps is here for. So when people enroll in helps, they call us on the phone. We ask them some basic questions, and then we read them a little script about what we do. And sometimes they call us 2, 3, 4, 5 times before they decide to enroll. We don't turn anyone away. The cost is minimal. About 1 out of 6 or 7 of our clients get our help for free. But those that pay a very minimal amount. And then you're our client literally forever. So you never have to deal with debt collectors. And that means if you ever ever have a question or concern, you can always call us no matter how often. That's what helps us here for. And once again, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat feature and I'll try to address it. And we have some regulars that look at this channel all the time. And then we have a lot of people just come in that are new, okay? And if you're new, I want to welcome you. And you can listen today and you can look at some of our other videos. We have a lot of YouTube live videos, but in our regular YouTube channel, we have videos on specific topics. And if you really want to learn more about helps, you can get on, there's a website or a YouTube page called Senior Living, seniorliving.org. And helps does a lot of videos with senior living. And some of those videos get hundreds of thousands of views. So Miss H asked, what if a senior has a judgment against them and join helps later? When, if anything, can be done by helps about the issues they have? Well, a lot of our clients do call us, Ms. H, that have judgments, or they've been sued and they don't know what to do. So If you've been sued or there's a judgment, ask you to send us a copy of the lawsuit. Now, we don't need everything, just the first 2 or 3 pages. We need the name of the attorney that sued you and their address, and then the case number. And then when you enroll, what we're going to do is we're going to send a letter to the attorney who sued you. We're going to tell that attorney that your income is Social Security or pension, that it's protected, that you can't afford to pay the debt. We understand that they either got a judgment or they're going to get a judgment, but you're not going to pay the debt. And we remind them of the protected nature of your bank account. Although we really don't need to do that, but we do it anyway because your account is protected without us having to do anything. Okay. And if you've been sued, then eventually they'll probably get what's called a default judgment. I mean, you could contest the lawsuit if you want, but if you owe the money, most of our clients don't worry about doing that because they lose anyway. So you don't need to fight the lawsuit. Okay, you don't need to worry about it. Even if there's a court date or time when you get sued, if you read it carefully, that's only if you're going to contest the lawsuit. So you don't need to worry about getting sued. And if you're new and you already have judgments against you, doesn't matter. You can still enroll with help. So you don't need to worry about those judgments. If you made arrangements to pay those judgments, you can stop paying them. They can't collect from you, even if you made an agreement to pay them. But once again, if you have any questions, you can call us toll free 855-435-7787, and we'll go over your situation. Okay, so you don't need to worry. So grandbaby says, life's overwhelmed by credit card debt. Followed your advice about using minimum amount on car insurance and saved me hundreds of dollars. Yeah. So what did I tell grandmammy? So see, our second mission is to educate seniors how to maintain their financial independence. So if you have car insurance, if you have a car, you're not required to have a lot of insurance on it. States usually have a minimum amount. Could be 25,000, it could be 10,000. You don't have to have 100,000 coverage or 300,000 coverage. That's costs a lot more money. Just have the very minimum. Well, then you might say, well, Eric, if they're the very minimum and I get in a wreck and I cause a lot of damage, they're going to sue me. I won't have enough money to cover. Well, it doesn't matter. Why doesn't it matter? Because remember, your income is protected. No one can do anything. They can't take it from you. All you need is enough insurance so that you're legal to drive. Okay, you got to have insurance. Now, if you have an older car that's free and clear, you may not need to keep comprehensive or collision. Just have liability. That will save you even more money. So I'm glad to hear that. So Mrs. H, well, let me go. Bonnie says, I have a small amount of self-employment income. Is there a way to protect it or at least a portion of it? Yeah, you're not going to need to worry about it. If you get self-employment income and you have Social Security, you remember twice the amount of your federal benefits, which includes Social Security deposit in your bank account, is protected, regardless if there's other funds in the account. So if you got $1,500 in Social Security each month and you have a checking account and it goes there, then $3,000 in that bank account is protected automatically, even if there's money came in there from your self-employment income. Okay. Now, is someone going to be able to garnish your self-employment income? I don't know how. Then it would be extremely unlikely and difficult for them to do it. It just doesn't happen. And what do I know? Well, I'm 74, been an attorney for 46 years, filed between 30 and 40,000 bankruptcies, and helps for the last, 15 years. No, you don't need to worry about them taking your self-employment income. I talked to a guy yesterday and he had some self-employment income. And I said, well, you don't need to worry about it. I said, and he worked for different people. He did a job for someone. And I said, no one would ever, if they had a judgment, they'd have to serve a writ of garnishment on the person you did the work for the minute they were getting ready to pay you. And how are they going to do that? They're not going to do that. So you don't need to worry, Bonnie. You're going to be fine. So Ms. H asks, when a person takes out a title loan on their car and it's only on Social Security, can they take the car if the title loan's in default, not paid after a few months? Uh, yeah, they can. Um, there might be instances when they wouldn't do that. I'll explain. Um, they get a title loan largely because, you know, people are worried about their car getting repossessed. But if you had an older model car that wasn't worth hardly anything, they may not even decide to repossess the car. Okay, they forget it because it costs money to repossess the car. Cars worth 1,000 or less, they have to follow procedures to get it sold. They may just ignore it. But yeah, if they have a title loan and they have the title, then yeah, they could theoretically repossess the car. That you're right. It is your net Social Security. See, the way it works is if someone were to sue you and get a judgment, first off, it's unlikely your bank would ever be garnished because the creditor that got the judge that has the judgment, they probably don't know where you bank, and there's no place they can find out where you bank. But if they happen to know, and then they file a writ of garnishment, your bank, there's a department in your bank that looks at where money came from that was deposited in your account. They don't look, they can't see the gross. All they can see is the net amount that was deposited. Okay, the amount. And then they times that times two. So yeah, Randall, it's based on the net. And, but even if you're working not self-employment for wages, every state, there's a federal law protects 217.50 net per week in wages. So you could make $200 an hour, 1 hour a week, and it's all protected. It's net, okay, and that works out to 435 every 2 weeks, about 950 a month. But then some states don't even allow garnishments to take place, such as Texas, and then other states protect a lot more than 217.50 net per week. So you know, I would say maybe a quarter of the states have exemption laws that protect more than the federal amount, which is 217.50, maybe even up to a third of the states. Um, so no, they're not going to. But so for that reason, we tell our clients, if you want to work, go ahead and go to work. Okay, the chance of you having a problem with your wages is pretty darn minimal. Pretty darn minimal. You can always call and talk to us. That's what we're here for. So this person writes in and they say, what do they say? I am currently being sued for credit card debt. I'm 73 years old and only receive Social Security benefits and an annual distribution from a retirement account directly deposited to my checking account. I do not own a house or have any assets that are non exempt. I need representation for this civil complaint. I hope you can help. Well, okay. So what helps is we're a national law firm. We represent people in all 50 states. We give legal information. We don't give legal advice. So we don't represent seniors in court. So we would tell this guy, his only income is Social Security and retirement, which is protected, can't be taken from him. If he owes the money, he does not need to defend the lawsuit. Okay, so he doesn't need representation. So yeah, we can help him. When he calls, we're going to ask him some questions. And then if he enrolls, we're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued him, let him know that his income's protected and he can't afford to pay the debt. And so that they leave him alone. And if he has other creditors that are bothering him, they're going to leave him alone. And then for whatever reason, if one of those creditors or collectors turn over to a new collection agency and he gets a new notice 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, let us know. We're going to send a letter out to that new collection agency and they're going to leave him alone. If he gets sued by someone else, we're going to contact the attorney, let him know that his income's protected. We're going to call him on the phone, make sure he understands that they can't do anything and he's going to be okay. And of course, he can always call us. So I got an email, another one from someone who mentioned that they were going to enroll with National Debt Relief. There's a lot of debt management programs out there. There's for-profit and nonprofit. They pretty much operate the same. The for-profit ones, which National Debt Relief is, they kind of front load their fees so that when you enroll with them, they get paid at the beginning because eventually they figure that you're not going to stay with them. You find out if you're a senior and you find out you don't have to pay the debt, you can quit. You don't need to stay with them. And we find that the vast majority of these debt management or debt settlement companies don't tell a senior the basic fact that their Social Security is protected, so is their pension, and that they can be protected from credit harassment. Instead, they enroll them, put some of them into poverty, making payments they can't afford to pay. So this person contacts us from Georgia, and this is what they say. They get about $2,600 in Social Security and a pension. He called because he can't afford his car loan anymore. His wife isn't working, and he was upside down on the car. In other words, he owed more on the car than it was worth. I don't know what the payment was. This is the notes from one of our paralegals. And we sent him some information. And then he called back a week later and enrolled with Helps. So what we would have told him is this: if you have a car that you can't afford, you don't have to keep it. You can stop making the payment. You can still drive the car. Just make sure it's insured. It might take them a couple months before they get around to repossessing the car. If you had a garage, you kept it in the garage, they can't force you to open the garage to repossess the car. But eventually the car is going to go back. They're going to sell the car. Likely they're going to sell it for less than what you owe. The difference is called a deficiency. And you'll get a letter in the mail from the lender saying you owe a certain amount, which is called a deficiency notice. Now, if you're a client of Helps, you get us a copy of that letter. We're going to send a letter to the lender letting them know that you can't afford to pay that debt, not to bother you, so he can leave you alone. So, but if you're enrolled with Helps and you have a car payment you're going to make, maybe you can afford it. Maybe if you don't have to pay these other debts, you can afford the car payment. But if you decide in a couple months, 6 months, a year, hey, I can't afford this car payment anymore, you could always choose to stop making the car payment and let it go back. And we have emails that talk about affordable transportation. A lot of times I'll tell seniors that, maybe you just simply you can't afford the car, you can let it go back. Sometimes it's a choice between, the car or the house. And most of the time seniors are going to pick the house. I'll make the house payment. I'm going to give the car payment, let it go back. But you can get affordable transportation. Henry Ford was from America. There's a lot of cars available, and it's never been easier to buy an affordable car than it is today. In the old days, we had to look at the want ads, but now we've got Craigslist, and we have Facebook Marketplace, where someone describes their car in detail, and you get maybe a half a dozen pictures or more of the car. It's a wonderful, and you call them right on the wonderful way to buy a used car. I tell people, if you had $1,500 to a couple $1,000, if you're patient and you look for a car being sold by an owner and they advertise that it runs good, you might buy a car that's, 15, 20 years old, maybe even older. But there's a lot of old cars that are 20 years old or older that may have even 150 or 200,000 miles or even more that are mechanically reliable. And it's not like you're driving cross country. You're just going around home. Odds are you're going to get a car that's pretty good. It's probably better if you're going to buy a cheap car like that to buy it from an owner, because you buy it from a dealer, they don't have any guarantee, and in fact, they plaster a notice on the card that says sold as is. Where if you buy it from an owner directly, if they represent that it's in mechanical condition, it's pretty good, you probably can rely on that, because they don't want you calling back next week saying, why did you sell me a lemon? They don't. My experience is that private parties will generally represent honestly the value of their vehicles. So this person contacts us from Arkansas and says, I'm 72, my income is $900 Social Security, and I get 600 in VA benefits. Um, it's a Navy pension. She has medical debt and being sued. And she says she thinks someone somehow used her account and ran up some dental bills in her name. And the note from our paralegal says that she's very, very timid lady. And so we explained how her bank account was protected, and why she didn't worry. It looks like she may have been sued. And we let her know that we don't represent people in court. So if she wanted to fight the lawsuit, she would have to do that herself. And she's going to look at it with her daughter. Sometimes we talk to clients and they may not owe a debt and they've been sued on it, but they have other debt as well. They could defend, you could defend yourself if you want, but a lot of seniors, they don't want to do that. And you don't have to, because even if you get a judgment against you for a debt that you don't owe, that wasn't your fault, then they're not going to be able to collect from you. But you can represent yourself if you want. Judges generally bend over backwards if people are sued and they want to represent themselves to help someone who represents themselves. They don't need to be scared about doing that if you want to do that. Okay. Okay, here we go. This person contacted us from Nevada. Had to stop working as this is notes from one of our paralegals. As his hands, he can't use his hands like he used to. And he went into credit card debt taking care of his family. And this is interesting. I don't know if I talked about this one or not. He's married and his wife doesn't have any idea about his credit card debt, what he did. He's buying a home and has a couple cars. So let's talk about that. So apparently he's married, the debt is in his name alone. He doesn't want to tell his spouse about the problem he's gotten himself into. Now, maybe he's worried she's going to be mad at him, or maybe he doesn't want to tell her because he doesn't want to worry her. I'll say it's the second reason. He doesn't want her to be worried. He can enroll in helps. We can help him. And his wife doesn't need to know about it. She's not going to be responsible for it, for his credit card debt. Years ago, I may have told this story before. Gosh, it must have been at least 30 years ago. And I got a call from a man Or I called this guy back and they were in chapter 13 bankruptcy, and I started talking to him. And after a minute or a couple minutes, I realized he had no idea that he was even in bankruptcy. Okay. And I thought to myself, well, how in the world do we get this far without him knowing that he'd filed bankruptcy? He would have had to gone to a first meeting of creditors. Maybe the trustee let just the wife go. And I could tell he was really getting upset when I was talking to him because he had no idea what had happened. And I knew exactly what had happened. The wife was scared of the guy. She was scared of him. And so she didn't know what to do. And she called us. This is when I was doing bankruptcy, at least 30 years ago. 35 could have been a long time ago. And she didn't want to say anything to him. Well, anyway, because of the way their financial situation, they had to file together. And now all of a sudden I was calling to get him some information because there was a little issue on the case. And he never knew that he was in the middle of a bankruptcy. So what did I do? I said, wait a minute, stop. I said, you need to listen to me. And I said, I think I know what happened. And I explained to him, I think what I need to tell you is going to be important. I said, you need to realize that your wife has actually saved you financially. And I explained to him what she had done and how the bankruptcy had saved a foreclosure on the home. And I said, you had some financial problems. She was probably taking care of it, probably didn't have enough money. By the end, I had him all calmed down, and I'm pretty sure there was no fight about this, but I always remember that phone call. Okay. But we have a lot of clients where only the one spouse enrolls and helps. But usually most of them know about it. But if the other spouse wants to keep paying his or her debt and not be part of helps, that's fine. But I always tell the client, if your spouse later decides that they can't afford the debt, they can always enroll in helps. No extra fee. We'll just join them with you. And the spouse that decides to enroll later, give us the creditors, send a cease and desist letter out. We're going to help you out. We're to help people. We're not here to add to your problems. So here's one. I think this was a comment from one of our YouTube videos. They said, well, okay, if a senior, as a senior, my car is repossessed and the deficiency that is put on a 1099-C, I must pay taxes on that deficiency as the IRS counts it as income. Is that correct? Well, I think I probably wrote him back or made a reply on the comment and said, highly unlikely that's going to be an issue. A 1099-C, if you have a debt that you don't pay and it's over like $600, a creditor is normally required to send a notice to the IRS saying that you didn't pay that debt. And then the IRS can impute that into you as being taxes, as income that you have to pay taxes on. Well, first off, if you're on Social Security, maybe a little other income, and you're not required to file taxes, you don't need to worry about filing a tax return. You'll never hear from the IRS about a 1099-C if you get one. And you don't have to file a tax return because you got a 1099-C. Even if you do file taxes, if your debt exceeds your assets, which is the case for probably many or most of our clients, you're deemed insolvent, and there's a form you can file called 982 if you file tax returns where you don't have to pay the tax. But even if you did owe a tax and you're a modest or lower income, you can likely qualify for what's called currently not collectible status with the IRS and not have to pay the tax. So a 1099 normally isn't going to be a problem for a senior. I can't remember the last time we had an issue with that being a problem for one of our clients. How's that for an answer? Okay. Okay. So Ms. H asked good question. Thank you for your questions. I don't know if you're asking them for yourself or if you're thinking what other people are thinking. Either way, they're great. When someone is waiting on getting Social Security and has a lot of credit card debt, can they still join HELPS or wait till they have their Social Security in the bank account so income is protected, then join? Okay, we represent people that get Social Security or pensions, okay? But let's say someone calls and they say, I'm going to be quitting in 4 or 5 or 6 months and getting my Social Security. And right now they're upside down. They can't pay the debt anymore. We could still enroll them in HELPS. We have a different letter that we send out. If you stop paying the debt, as soon as the creditor would sue, if they ever would sue, would probably be at least 6 months away. By then you're going to be getting Social Security. So no, we don't have a hard and fast rule on that. You know, a lot of people call us are going to be getting Social Security in 2 months or next month. No, you can enroll. You can enroll. Hi, everyone. Glad to have you here. So this person contacts us from New York. They say, I found you online. I'm 72 years old. I want to quit a debt management program. Amen. I would like to know how I quit this. All you do is stop paying them. Call them on the phone. They're taken out automatically. Call them on the phone and say, don't take my money out anymore. And if they're holding any money for it, ask them to return it. Sometimes I'll tell people, I'll say, while you're at it, once you ask them, why when I enrolled with you, didn't you tell me that my Social Security was protected? I've been going without my heart medication, or I've been going without food to be able to pay this debt. Why didn't you tell me when I enrolled that I didn't have to pay this debt, that no one could do anything to me? See what they say. Said, is my paid for house safe? Well, New York has homestead exemptions that are fairly generous for homes. Depends on the county where you live. But even if you have a home that's worth more than what the exemption is, and someone were to sue and get a judgment, they never take your home. They don't go. Consumer judgment creditors don't try to take people's homes. They don't do that. And my consolidated school loan is in deferment. I only have Social Security. I can't pay the bills. Payments increased. You have to pay your property taxes. So then they called back, looks like 2 days ago. Says they watch us on YouTube all the time. Says the paralegal says that she's a big fan of our YouTube page. Well, maybe they're listening now. We had talked to her about putting a stop payment with her bank for the debt consolidation company. You can do that, but my experience is if you call the debt consolidation company, they're going to stop taking the money out. You don't need to put an automatic stop on with your bank. You don't need to do that. Now, if that sounds like you, it may not be you. Okay. We talk to a lot of people all over the country. A lot of people have similar or same situation. And that's one reason I like to read these little notes, because, if you've got a problem, someone else has the problem. Okay. And it's going to help someone else. Okay. This person asked, if they quote charge off the debt, how can it then be sold and I still owe the same amount? Doesn't the original creditor get a tax break for the charge off? Well, yeah, but you still owe the money, but I'll go on. How is it legal? We still owe the whole amount if they are getting a tax break from it and they sell it. So then they make some more money off the debt. Seems so scammy. Well, okay, I'll explain. So if a collector or a creditor writes off a debt, then yeah, they can, the way they do their taxes, they can take that as a deduction. However, if they're later able to collect on the debt, then they have to report that as income. So no, it's not scammy. Okay? They're still gonna have to, they're not getting a tax break that way. So this person writes, can tax creditors take your alimony? No, can't touch your alimony. I get a very small alimony and two separate direct monthly deposits. Most of that goes to my monthly mortgage and HOA. The only way there could be a problem with alimony is if you deposit into your bank account and it wasn't the account in which your social security goes, or it made it exceed twice the amount of your social security, then in that event, the excess could be held up. You'd have to file a challenge of garnishment or claim of exemption, explaining to the court that that money was alimony. But the chance of that being a problem is so remote. I mean, if the alimony hit and you take it out right then and use it to pay your HOA or your house payment, then the chance of them, they'd have to hit it at the exact right time. And I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen because I never hear of it. I mean, it's within theory, but don't think you need to worry about that. But your alimony can't be taken. Okay. Now more than ever, this type of help is and will be needed. Live your life and all will be well. That's right. That's why helps us here. We don't want you to worry. And we'll be here forever. When I'm gone, helps will be here. Be a lot bigger then. Be a lot bigger then. Someday, I think helps. There's no reason why we shouldn't have count our clients in the millions, because there are millions of seniors that have these problems and they have no idea if this help is available. Is 982 the form the same as currently not collectible status? No, it's different. Um, you don't really need to worry about it, Freedom. If you get a 1099 seat and call us, we can send you an email about this. We did a video about 982 about 2 or 3 years ago on YouTube Live with my former partner. I guess he's still my partner in a way, Rex Danes, on February 9th, 2 years ago, that you can look at on YouTube Live. That we go into great detail about it. We're not seeing, the most the IRS can do is offset 15% of Social Security. We don't see that happen very often anymore. It used to be fairly regular when helps was newer, but not now, because I think the IRS artificial intelligence, the computer program lets them know that seniors only getting Social Security and it's minimal amount. And they could probably qualify for currently not collectible status, so they're not trying to set off their Social Security. Okay. Judy asks, which is better, a ladybird deed or joint rights of survivorship when adding someone to a deed? There is no problem with the person being added now or in the future. Under a ladybird deed, you can change and remove the person. A ladybird deed would probably be better in Florida. But state laws, not all state laws have ladybird deeds. There's like 7 or 8 states, and it varies. So it depends. can't really answer it in this kind of format. Is it possible to attend an asset hearing for cards in wife's name? Uh, are you asking me if you would be required to attend? The answer is no. Is your wife going to have to attend? Doubt it. I mean, someone would have to sue, get a judgment, and then you'd have to get a motion for some type of debtor's exam or something like that. If that happens with the helps clients, we contact the attorney, let them know, hey, listen, this is their income. Do you really want to waste your time? Probably 19 out of 20 times they waive the appearance. You don't have to go. But we go over it. So Richard, sorry, is it possible for a Region 10 asset hearing in Florida for my wife by way of? All right, I don't think she can handle, we're in our 80s. Well, Richard, if you're a member of HELPS, we take care of that for you. I mean, chances of her being required to go to an actual hearing in person is so close to zero, I don't even want to talk about it hardly. Okay? Call and talk to us. But if you're talking about worried about something that could happen in the future, the chance of that happening is so remote. And if it were, if there was something, we'd be able to know what to do. But no, it's not going to happen. The most that would happen in Florida, if you get a judgment against you, they have what's called a fact information sheet that they send to people. And then it's a couple pages, maybe 20 or so questions or more. A lot of the questions are the client described him as being intrusive. And he made a comment, I don't know where I read it just recently, and he said, we talked to helps, we helped him with filling out that form, and he said, I didn't answer the intrusive questions, and they never got back. I never heard back from them. You don't need to answer the intrusive questions. They want to know your kids, where your kids live and their phone number. What business is that of theirs? They don't even know that. Okay. But I don't think you have anything to worry about, Richard. Okay, you can call us if you do have a question. What is the statute of limitations in California, and does the cease and desist letter get passed on to the collector? I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it might be 5 years for a collection of a debt. Could be 6. You can just Google credit card statute of limitations lawsuit and the name of the state, and the answer should pop up. Does the cease and desist letter get passed on to the collector? The answer is no. That's why our help is ongoing, because if you get a new debt collection notice from a new debt collector, and you let helps know, we're going to send a letter out to that new debt collector. It doesn't get passed on. And it's not uncommon for our clients to get another debt collection notice after we've sent one to someone. The debt collectors will assign or sell the account to a new debt collector. And it's, you got to realize that it's a volume business, and it's all automated because of the computers. They just push a button. Hundreds of letters can go out. Thousands of letters can go out a day. And they count on striking gold with a couple of them, some people paying the debt. They don't have to tell a senior that their income is protected. All they have to say is, we're a debt collector, any information we get can be used for that purpose. So they don't have to tell you that your income is protected. You're learning that from helps right now, that you don't need to deal with this. Okay, this person contacts us from Florida. This is notes from a paralegal that enrolled this person. Both husband and wife was on the phone. The husband had received shocking news of having cancer. They've been current on every single bill and are now, it says, racked with guilt. The debts from the medical bills will cause them to give up maintaining their credit cards because they cannot afford to do it all. This is what the paralegal wrote. We have such great people that work for HELPS. She says, I reassured them we had a phone hug about it all. I've never heard that term, a phone hug. In other words, she was assuring them that they were going to be okay. If the phone hug does it, that's great. They already knew about HELPS as they were the ones that enrolled their parents back in the early days of HELPS getting started. Their dad has since passed away, but mom is still a client with us. He said they never thought they would be needing us, but are so thankful they knew to call us. Yeah, you bet we can help them. And that's what we're here for. If you've got these problems, and don't hesitate to call us. We're nice. We're not going to make you feel guilty. We're going to give you nothing but good news. Okay? 855-435-7787. You know, if you don't need us, maybe someone you know does. And you can share that information. We talk to people all day long that are so thankful to find HELPS. They never knew it existed, or I wish they would have known about it sooner. So please share what we do with others. Here's another one from Florida. I'm very scared that my creditors will be able to get a judgment to garnish my bank account, which contains my Social Security. You don't need to be scared about that. They get SSI. I'm 61 years old. I have income below the poverty level. I'm living month to month. Please help. I'm really hoping to hear from you all very soon. This person's going to get our help for free. Their income is going to be below the threshold that we can waive their fees. And we're going to tell this person, you don't need to worry about your creditors. You don't have to worry about your income being garnished. Your bank account's going to be safe. You don't need to worry. You got plenty of worries on your plate already. But the worries about the debt are going to go away. You don't need to worry about the debt. And the creditors are going to leave you alone. And I'd say that to anyone that's listening to me. So this person calls us or contacts us, and I don't know her from where, but they said, I have a summons today and I have 30 calendar days to answer it. He said, I'm a single female and 70 years old and I need help how to handle the summons. Well, you don't need to handle the summons. Says, I'm on Social Security disability. I owe back taxes and federal, and I'm being contacted by a collection agency. Can they garnish my wage? I don't know that she gets a wage, but I also student loans. Can that be forgiven? Well, okay. Let's do one thing at a time. She got sued. Her income is Social Security. They can't touch her Social Security. If she owes the debt, she doesn't need to worry about the lawsuit. She enrolls in HELPS. We're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued her, letting him know that her income is protected, not to touch her bank account, and they can't. Now, she gets Social Security disability. Well, if she gets Social Security disability, she's probably going to qualify to get that student loan forgiven. We have an email that explains that. Okay. So no, she's not going to worry about the student loan. And she says, I owe back taxes, state and federal. Well, if you owe state income taxes, you don't need to worry about the state income tax. The state can't touch your Social Security. Your bank account is protected from a state tax collector, twice the amount, just like it is from a credit card collector. It says, I'm being contacted by a collection agency. Well, you're going to give us that collection agency. We're going to send them a cease and desist that they're going to leave you alone. Can they garnish my wage? Well, like I explained earlier, $217.50 net is protected each week from wage garnishment. They'd have to know where you work. You're likely not making much more than that, if that. So No, the chance of you having a problem with your wages being garnished is probably zero or close to zero. So I wouldn't worry. So you're going to be okay. And that's generally the information we have for seniors is that you're going to be fine. So if the debt collectors know your income is protected, you tell them you know it is, and they call you and still want to sign you up, will they be liable for shady dealings? Okay, I got to read this again. So I think what you're saying is if we tell a debt collector that one of our clients' income is protected, and then they still call you, the debtor, and try to get you to pay them, are they going to be in trouble? Well, if they're a debt collector, yeah, they could violate the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. They could be sued for attorney's fees and $1,000 for every violation. You bet. We're going to start doing that here pretty soon. Maybe we hired an attorney especially to do that. Especially to do that. Just because I mentioned this, I think yesterday or the day before, we're having a hard time finding attorneys willing to sue a debt collector for violating the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So we can't find someone to do it. We're going to do it ourselves. Someone's got to sue them to make them follow the law. So this person contacts us from Maryland. She'd been age of 78. I've been paying my debts every month and stayed up to date until this month. Credit card debt and payday loans, 30,000. Overextended and foregoing basic needs to keep these payments. But medical issues are starting to catch up, and she feels stuck in a never-ending circle. She had been interested in national debt relief until she came across our YouTube video. Thankfully, you did. Now, National Debt Relief is a for-profit debt management company or debt settlement company, whatever they are. And they won't tell a senior their income is protected. They'll sign them up, put them in and out of poverty, making payments they can't afford to pay. And then they front load their fees. So you're with them for 6 months and you finally can't do it anymore. They've already been paid a lot of money. They're scammers when it comes to seniors. And I say that to their face. I challenge them to sue me. They're scammers when it comes to seniors because they don't tell a senior that their income is protected, that they don't have to pay the debt. And this person asked, let me see, I've got some other ones here. Coming down near the end. If I don't show up for a credit card civil court case date after being served, what would be the consequences? Thank you, guys. Thank you. You guys are great. P.S. I live in Florida and I'm living on Social Security only. Well, first off, if you've been sued, you're not required to show up to court. You only go to court, if you read it carefully, you go to court if you're going to contest and fight the lawsuit. But if you owe the debt, you don't need to go to court. Okay, even if you go to court and you owe the debt, they're just going to get a judgment against you. A judgment is a judgment is a judgment. A default judgment, which you get for not going to court, is the same as a judgment if you go to court and you don't have to go to court and tell the judge that you owe the debt. They're going to get a judgment either way. You do nothing, they're going to get a default judgment. So what are the consequences? Your only income is Social Security. There's no consequence. Just keep the balance in your bank account in which Social Security deposited less than twice the amount of your social security, they can't do anything. Now, in Florida, they're gonna send you probably, get a fact information sheet. We can help you fill that out. It's, do it on your own. It's pretty simple, but well, I say it's pretty simple. It can be intimidating because they ask some, like I said earlier, some intrusive questions that you're not gonna need to worry. Person says, yes, I live in Kentucky. I have a judgment lien on my house, which is only worth around $30,000. I'm on low income and my kids and children put on the house deed back in 2019. I never signed a contract with them, didn't need to. Never signed a contract with them since 2020. My identity was stolen. And can you help me? I don't know want to lose my home. You're not going to lose the home. First off, you got a homestead exemption in Kentucky. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty low, but it doesn't matter. Even if you have equity in a home, more than what the homestead exemption, it's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to try to take your home. And if you added your kid's name to the home before the judgment, then that's all the more reason why they can't do anything. And then when you pass away, when you kick the bucket, your death, the property is going to go to the joint owners because of survivorship rights. It's going to go to your kids. So this person in Kentucky doesn't need to worry at all. Should I be concerned the credit card is filing a judgment? They have my bank account number. No, just make sure you have one bank account and you keep the balance in there less than your federal benefit, less than your social security. Yeah, 1,400 in social security times 2 is $2,800. Just keep it less than that. Okay, if they were to garnish your bank account, technically the bank has 48 hours to examine the account, see if the money came from a protected source, but usually they do it within 48 minutes. They do it pretty quick. I mean, I suppose you could, if you were really nervous about it, change and have your social security go into a different bank account, but that can be difficult. You don't have to do that. Okay. Okay, it looks like we've come to the end of another day, actually the end of another week. So I'm gonna sign off here. Please press the like button. Yeah. It's a headache to change banks. You know, just keep the balance less, have one account, keep the balance less than twice the amount of social security. I thank you for your comments. I'm glad we're solving problems for seniors. Please share what we do with others. If you have any other comments, you can put them in the comment. I'll try to address those later or directly with you, or we'll talk about them next Monday or Tuesday. But thank you, and everyone have a great day. Have a good weekend. Don't worry. If you're a helps client, you got a question, call us. If you're not a client and you have questions, call us. That's what we're here for. 855-435-7787. Sure and share what we do with others. A lot of people need this help. God bless everyone and have a great day.